Hello and welcome to another Out of Spec Reviews video. Guys, you know we cover charging infrastructure from time to time, and in my impression it's something we need to go deeper and deeper into. So I'm thinking every month or every quarter we should do a video like this where you guys and us, we all collaborate to share our experiences with charging. Of course, you're going to watch the video. We're going to share our findings, the trends that we're seeing, new hardware, new locations, new types of service. And then, of course, I really want you guys to comment down below with your experiences driving an EV during this month of October 2022, and some things that you're hoping to improve and some things that you've seen improve that you're pretty pleased with. So overall, maybe we do this once a month. We'll just do it, sort of a charging report or our charger findings here in America in regards to Tesla and non-Tesla electric vehicles. Alyssa and I are with the dogs, and we're actually in our Rivian R1T towing a Lucid Air out to California right now. And, we've been stopping at chargers. We said, hey, we've been talking a lot with friends, other people in the industry about charging recently. And I thought, well, let's just share, sort of the trends of conversations we're having with some of you guys. And I think, the first thing we've noticed is we should actually talk about this trip maybe later on in the video, but there's some big news coming along just in terms of the new charger locations opening up a major corridor close to our hearts and where we live, which is, we just went to one the other day.
I-80.
I-80 through Wyoming should be open, I think, by late fall, early winter.
Hopefully.
So it sounds like Rollins is installed, Cheyenne is going in, Rock Springs, I think, is already online, which means no longer do we have to add 5 hours on our trip in a CCS vehicle, about 4 hours longer, to go down to Denver, over I-70 and up to Salt Lake. We could just go straight through Wyoming and go to Salt Lake City from where we live in Fort Collins. So that, for me, is huge news. What's your impression of that? Because right now we have to take a Tesla on that loop.
Right. Yeah, I've been wanting to take that trip for some of our road trip videos for rescue dogs, because a lot of the dogs and fosters are actually in Salt Lake City, Utah. And I can't go there in this car yet, but I can take the Tesla. But I don't think we really want to have rescue dogs in the Model S Plaid right now. So we're waiting for that to open up.
Yeah, I mean, worst case, throw them in the car. Cars are meant to be used. Everything's a dog hauler that we own. But certainly the Rivian, the e-tron, those are, dedicated dog transportation vehicles. And I mean, it's super exciting. So my guess, and I guess maybe higher level, there has been a lot of talk, especially recently, of Tesla opening up their Supercharger network. Now, in a year from now, it's going to sound so funny because my prediction is it's just going to be wide open at select stations. And we'll get into predictions in a little bit. But right now, Tesla, the grumblings are the Supercharger network will open to public CCS vehicles. The question is how? Right? We don't know if they're going to be adding a separate cable onto their chargers. We don't know if it's just going to be version 4 superchargers that are going to have the CCS plugs directly on them, or if they're going to offer an adapter for us to purchase, maybe $500 adapter or something like that, for us to buy and charge, to gain access to their network. If you had to guess, how do you think Tesla is going to open up their network in America?
Well, if they're going to be opening up the current chargers, then there's going to have to just be an adapter. Or if they just do the version 4, I think is what you said, then, I mean, I don't see that. It's a fix, it's a help, but how much does it really help if the infrastructure is not even there yet? So we're still going to have to be waiting for infrastructure.
Right, so infrastructure is really, in my opinion, right now, the key, I would say, negative to driving an electric vehicle. The cars are great, the trucks are great, drive dynamics are awesome, towing ability is wonderful, and in my impression, infrastructure is still the pain point. And with Tesla, it's actually becoming a pain point as well, which is sort of new. So we've driven Teslas longer than most other electric vehicles. We own 2 of them currently, for those who may not know our videos. And some of the grumblings going on with Tesla issues right now are expensive and full chargers. So during the day, especially on the West Coast, we're seeing upwards of 60 cents per kilowatt hour, which is a lot of money. That's like $60+ to full charge a Model S.
That is pretty expensive.
That's again at fast charging. We always recommend people to find a level 2 solution for home use or workplace charging or something other than relying on DC chargers every day. And we'll talk about that in a little bit as well, because our home charging went down and we lived with some DC charging, which was a fun experiment, but now we're back to having home charging. It's really nice.
Very happy.
Yeah. But so we're noticing Tesla chargers getting expensive, and right around the same time as this, Tesla just this month, I believe it was earlier this month or end of last month, launched the Tesla to CCS adapter. And this is, or is it CCS to Tesla? I'm not really sure which way it is, but basically it allows Teslas to charge on the public CCS chargers. Now, for years, Tesla has offered a CHAdeMO adapter, and the CHAdeMO adapter was limited to 125 amps at your car's pack voltage, and you would use a CHAdeMO port like a Nissan Leaf would use, or an iMeave or something like that. But they're just really slow. It's 50 kilowatts if you hit it just right. With the CCS adapter, they are, you're typically going to get 500 amps in a charger, which is about 210, 212 kilowatts on Model S, maybe 180, 190 kilowatts on Model 3 and Model Y, since their pack voltage is a little lower. And you also get access to the Electrify America charging network, which, if you're a member, is 31 cents per kilowatt hour. Doesn't matter the time of day, doesn't matter the location, across the country. And there are some states that bill by the minute, but that's even cheaper if you have a fast charging EV. So we've seen a lot of Tesla owners go for the official North American Tesla and CCS adapter to allow the cars to charge at pretty much half price on Electrify America some of the time. That's pretty crazy, isn't it?
That's very good. I mean, we've been totally lucky that we don't have to pay for supercharging due to all of our credits that we've gotten thanks to a lot of you guys. And but yeah, I don't think I've really road tripped a Tesla in a couple years. So yeah, I don't remember what the charging infrastructure is even like.
Oh, you just plug in and walk away for the most part.
Well, yeah. I'm sure it's similar to what it used to be, but if anything has changed, I'm not 100% sure about
Well, let's talk about, I mentioned plug in and walk away. There are some issues with Tesla superchargers going on right now. And the first thing I'm noticing is because the cars, especially with new Model S and Model X, can charge so fast for so long, we're starting to see the handle temperature, the cable temperatures overheating. And that was really a problem over summer, where you would plug in, you'd get good power, and they would actually come off of max power, sometimes quite a bit, to try and cool down the handle, even though it's all liquid cooled for version 3 charging. That, I would say, is a pretty minor issue for most people. It maybe adds a couple minutes to a charging session, not the end of the world, but definitely a consideration to, something that I hope that they'll improve with version 4 charging, especially as the currents go higher, as the amps go higher. The other thing we're starting to notice is version 2 superchargers, the older ones, are starting to get busier. More people are buying Teslas, and so that means more people are power sharing. So you'll be there and you're really only getting a max of 72 kilowatts now. If you want to get nerdy, which I think we should, version 2 superchargers no longer seem to do a first arrival priority. What that means is the first car that plugged in the way it used to work got all the power, and then the second car, if you plugged in on 1A, you got everything. If someone came on 2B, 2A, get everything, 2B, you get the leftovers. Now it seems to do a force split calculation where you just kind of go right down at 72 kilowatts down the middle.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so I noticed that on my Model S Plaid road trip that's on our motoring channel I did in Baker, California. And that was an interesting one because Baker is a 40 stall supercharger, huge supercharger, and I took the last spot. So we're noticing a huge increase in traffic at Tesla superchargers. I feel like we've noticed maybe even a little bit of a downturn, especially in the Midwest, of supercharger installations. That we get these waves where certain regions get built up very quickly and then maybe the team focuses on another. Either way, I think the Tesla network is pretty good where we live, but I would love to have a charger, closer up to us in Fort Collins, and more options across Wyoming that are not version 2 superchargers. A lot of the corridors, especially the lower travel ones, were what Tesla originally installed, and so they're all version 2 chargers, and it's hard to find version 3s along highway corridors, which is kind of when you want them.
True, yeah.
Okay, so one last Tesla topic before we continue on with the rest. But I've noticed the CCS adapter that they offer. We had a friend of ours, Ryan, who has a Model S Plaid, who got 590 amps with the CCS adapter. It was a full 250 kilowatts on an Electrify America station. The station he used was the newer Signet one with the green glow around the outside of the unit, and it actually outputted more than the standard allows for with CCS. So the car asked for everything, and the charger gave him everything. Now, the chargers are physically capable of doing that, but the CCS standard, as far as I understand it, we did a whole podcast on this, is a 500 amp maximum, and the next generation hasn't quite been implemented yet. So I don't know what exactly is going on, but definitely some changes there, and that doesn't happen at every charging station. To me, that was like a fluke, but in a good way, because he said nothing got hot, and he got all the power in the world. So very interesting. Should we talk a little bit about the EA free charging situation that's been going on over the last few weeks?
Yeah, so EA has been open to the public for free the past, as they were rolling out a lot of their new charging, is our speculation is why. But now they're not anymore. Some are, some aren't. So
right. So now it was very much the overwhelming majority of the network was in free vend mode, as they say. It was labeled as complimentary charging. And this was for, I think, like a solid 4 weeks and maybe even more. I don't know the exact dates, but you could roll up to an EA station, plug in, and get free charging. And this, we did our whole towing road trip to Seattle and back, and pretty much didn't cost us anything. And to me, that's like a blatant, like, just leaving money on the table. I don't know what system update would take so long that you couldn't figure out payment processing for a month. Now, at the end of the day, the consumer is in the win, which is great, but that was a little bit sketchy. EA told us that this was because of back-end system upgrades that they were operating in free vend mode. So who knows? I don't know the inside of the company or how everything works, but apparently it took them a solid 4 weeks or so to implement their new back-end strategy, and now we're back to normal. And honestly, we have not had any issues since they've turned off free vend, activating chargers, getting them to charge with the app. It's been super seamless. So maybe whatever they did worked really well, and it's all good, because we have not had any payment activation issues whatsoever. The only issue you had was when you were driving a vehicle and we had an old expired credit card on our account.
Right, and it didn't tell me why I couldn't charge, and so I was very confused as to how to fix that problem. And of course, I have him to fix that problem. But if I were just the normal average Joe, I mean, would have been sitting and waiting for customer service to help.
Yeah, and you can always call them, and honestly, Electrify America's call center has and continues to be world-class, the nicest people, really wonderful folks. I typically don't call them very much, in full transparency. I'll just tweet about it on Twitter if we have an issue and go to the next, because I know someone will look at it, and I don't want to call them every day. But, if it's a major issue where I was stuck, which I'll get to, I was at one location, then I will give them a call. I think your issue was that the error code, that specific error code, didn't say it wasn't charging because our balance was in the negative or couldn't reload our card. It just said charging error and nothing really else.
Right, and then before that, I wasn't able to charge because the charging station was full, so it was already just not a good experience overall. But if they would have just told me, hey, you don't have enough funds, that would have been automatic, oh, okay, I'll just reload the funds, but didn't tell me that.
Right, so I logged into the app after you called, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember sometimes I have to change our card on there. So we just changed the default card to the current one. So and all was fine. All good. That's a very minor issue, and we're good. But we are noticing a big trend over the last 6 months especially, but maybe even over the last 3 months, of just everyone is out in their electric cars road tripping. And also, thank you to you guys. A lot of you guys are viewers. Every charging stop, we meet multiple viewers, pretty much guaranteed. And you all drive the coolest cars. We just met some folks driving from Washington to Louisiana in their Polestar 2, but the new update one. We also met some Lucid engineers at the last station, some Mercedes engineers who happen to be viewers. It was really cool just to see everyone out there testing cars, pushing cars. But this is leading to, we very rarely get a charge where we don't see anyone. Even yesterday, we pulled into a charger at about 1 o'clock in the morning, and we were not the only car charging. So the network usage, I would love to see the statistics. And this goes for EVgo, ChargePoint, Electrify America, Green Lots, Blink. I'm just seeing way more cars charging across the network. What I'm not seeing is a proportional increase in chargers going in. And so this is quite concerning to me. I'm curious what you guys think about this. Will we have full charging stations, more lines? Even in the middle of Utah, Green River, Utah, we had a line just before. And part of that line was another trend, which is we are seeing so many people full charge at charging stations, like ignoring the 80% recommended limit and just going all the way to full. For example, at the last charging stop, there was a Volvo C40 and a Volkswagen ID4. It's always the ID4 owners. Great car, but stop full charging your cars all the time. Now, if you need to make a stretch, look, we're towing a Lucid. We need to do deep charges in this. Totally acceptable. But just there seems to be an unnecessary amount of people that are sitting there for an hour to really just wait to that last point where your car clicks off at 100%. And so that comes with education, that comes with time, but people will figure it out. I mean, Alyssa, your e-tron charges faster up top than almost any other car, but do you ever full charge it?
It depends. I mean, it just depends on how far the next charger is, but I really don't road trip that car as much, just because what I would be road tripping it for, they do have really long spots in between, and I don't even think the car itself could make it. So that is just
Where are you
a whole
trying to
different
go?
problem.
We drove it across the country. What are you talking about?
When I go like into Nebraska and stuff like that,
yeah.
there's really long stretches. So I mean, if there was wind, if there was something else, then I'd just be stranded, and I don't really want to risk it. So I just don't really road trip that car as much. So, but if I am charging it at a fast charger, I probably charge it maybe to around like 80%, 60%. Just really depends on how long I just want to sit there, which is usually not long.
That's the nice thing about the e-tron, a very flat curve. But we even saw a guy yesterday full charging his Mustang Mach-E sitting at 12 kilowatts for over an hour. And I'm like, dude, like, go to the... I didn't say anything to him. That's not my place. At the end of the day, if someone's plugged into a charger and accepting power, it is my belief they have all the right in the world to charge their car, do whatever they want. Look, I do charging tests typically in the middle of the night when we're not blocking anyone. But I think it is something to at least be aware of if you're new to EVs, that maybe you could save some time unplugging early, getting to the next charger lower, like we've shown on our motoring channel with a lot of our road trips, and ultimately you'll have a faster road tripping experience that way. And we might push it harder than most do, going down to 0% or 5%. Some people want a 5 to 10% buffer or 15% buffer. That's fine, but a lot of chargers are only 100 miles apart, and it's faster just to hop, skip, and a jump across them. But this has been a real thing. That was the issue with Green River. Everyone there could have made it to the next charger, but we had a line forming because people wanted to full charge their cars. One of them was also a viewer who was full charging his ID4, and I'm like, you must not be really a viewer.
I don't know which episodes he's watching, but
yeah,
maybe it's reviews and he just doesn't watch
the motoring channel. Sure.
That makes sense.
It was pretty funny. But ultimately, no, I don't really give suggestions. I don't encourage people to do different things at chargers. If they're accepting power, great. The only time I might say something, if someone's like clogged up a charger, the car's done charging and someone's waiting, then I think I'd be like, hey, just so you know, you're done charging. But yeah, we not our place really, but just something to keep in mind. Okay, I want to talk about the big situation which has been going on, in my opinion, which is really changing the face of charging for us, which is we have talked for a long time about the ABB chargers in particular, outputting very weird power levels, having lots of issues going with downtime. And I'm not sure if that was due to lack of maintenance or poor hardware initially, or what exactly the issues were. I'm not on the inside, but we do know we, at least in our experience, had most problems charging at Electrify America ABB chargers. And we've also seen their response, which is ripping out a lot of the ABB chargers. So they must have agreed that there was an issue with ABB. I think we can surmise from this. Our local station was swapped out. Others were swapped out. I think they've probably done 20 or 30 stations now. I don't know the exact number. I haven't followed the progress, but these new chargers are beautiful. They're single cable only. They're at least the post is built by BTC. The chargers themselves are brand new hardware, co-developed with Electrify America, BTC, or SK Signet. You can have two different chargers. There's no way really of knowing when you're at the charger, but just background for you guys. And so a lot of the older ABB hardware is being ripped out of the ground. Now, before we get into how the new hardware is being produced, let's talk about that upgrade process, because we've followed this upgrade process pretty closely.
Right.
And so what we've noticed is when a station is about to go offline, they definitely update PlugShare and they let you know that, hey, this station is going to go offline. So always recommend checking PlugShare, but not necessarily their native app. Right, Alyssa?
Right, yeah. I ran into that issue when I was coming home from a girls' weekend and thought our local Loveland charger was open and available and I really needed to charge, and it ended up being down.
Right, so what happened was Electrify America did not update their app saying that this station's actually powers off, shut off, but PlugShare was somehow updated. That made no sense to me. As soon as we tweeted about it, 5 minutes later, what was it? Something like that? Then it popped up in the EA app. So that's why I tweet about things instead of just calling them, because it gets done faster in my opinion. We found out that situation, that our station was one of the early ones. It didn't turn out to be the first. I think we were the 4th or 5th station to get updated. But we got the brand new hardware, and honestly, it's been rocking at that station. It took them, I want to say, about 3 weeks, was it? Maybe a little less than 3 weeks? 2 weeks and a bit, something like that, to fully rip out ABB and then put in the new ones. What's interesting is most of these stations are 4-stall locations, so they're actually only putting 3 new dispensers in and charging hardware and leaving the original Chatamo.
Right.
The only time that they've actually swapped out the Chatamo and upgraded it is in Las Vegas. I noticed that they took out the ABB Chatamo and put in a Signet Chatamo.
Huh?
So that's very interesting to me. So my guess is the Las Vegas chargers are the SK Signet chargers, and then the Chatamo is also fed by a Signet unit, and of course we know that it is a Signet unit. The new ones are all BTC on the outside, I mentioned, of course, so it's hard to know what chargers are there. But that's the South Premium outlets. That was the only time I've seen them rip out the ABB Chatamo, just from browsing PlugShare and seeing around. So that's an interesting development. But I would say overall, we've seen a much higher success rate with these new chargers. We've seen the fastest power on any car that we've ever seen, 351 kilowatts delivered to the Lucid Air. They do load sharing and balancing, but I have to say, even charging with other cars at our local station, I have not felt the effects of balancing yet. So that's something I want to explore more, especially as we have Hummer EV coming and Rivian R1S and some other things to try and max out the station and figure out how the balancing logic works. But right now, I would say it's flat out. These things rip. I'm very impressed with them overall. Except for one issue which we ran into yesterday with the new chargers, which was apparently at around 70% state of charge. There tends to be a fluke thing that happens with Rivians, and actually an Audi e-tron GT it happened to. Who knows exactly, but the chargers don't seem to be outputting fully regulated power. And I spoke to some Rivian engineers about this, and they're going to give us an official response, which we're going to include right after this little clip, because I have a phone call with them in 5 minutes, and I'm curious to see what they have to say. But basically, we had our truck, we were charging, hit 72% state of charge. It's a Rivian R1T, we're on the new units, and the whole thing shows electrical fault, cars in turtle mode,
all bells and whistles.
Everything freaked out. But the charger did not show a fault. The charger saw, the car stopped charging, and it just said everything is fine, so no faults. We plugged in again after resetting the truck, same thing happened. I posted about it on Twitter, of course. That's the best way to find out what's going on with us. And multiple Rivian owners chimed in saying, hey, on the new EA hardware, the same things happened to me. Also, internally, Rivian confirmed that the same thing's happening with some of their test trucks. So very interesting to see. There was also an Audi e-tron GT there, the J1 platform car. Again, at about 77% state of charge, the car bricked itself, faulted, and said, electrical malfunction. So the theory is the chargers may not be either, they might be, not being able to regulate power well enough and overboosting, or it might, what Rivian told me is that there's too many swings and it's almost dirty power, if you will. I'm not sure of the exact issue. I'm not sure if we need to find out the exact issue. All I can say is the new hardware that's going in, there is some interoperability issues with some of the cars that are existing out there. Now, whether all of this turns out to be how the cars are programmed, how they're handling the new chargers, or if the new chargers are programmed wrong, I can't say. That's always the finger pointing issue where we end up in the middle trying to guess, and ultimately we don't know either way because I'm not looking at CAN signals or logs from either end. What I can say is that there seems to be I/O issues with at least a Rivian and Audi with the new hardware, and reported multiple times, and we've seen it multiple times. We've also had other totally flawless charging sessions with the new hardware, charging this truck up to full. And that's generally been my experience, is almost no issues with the new hardware until yesterday. And we also charged again on the new hardware after that in Glenwood Springs yesterday. No issues there. So that'll be an interesting one to watch unfold. So other things I want to mention, EVgo is going hard into their new units, expanding out. They're putting in Delta units and Signet units up to 350 kilowatts. My impression is that the Delta units go up to 540 amps, at least labeled on the chargers. Those ones seem to be able to deliver all the power. They're also simultaneous charging available on one unit. So I'm pretty thrilled with their new Delta units, although again, not perfect because I rolled up to one the other day and it said totally offline because the charging cable cooling system wasn't pressurized correctly, and that bricked the whole charger. It didn't even dip to a fail-safe power level. So more work to be done with robustness on some of this new hardware going in. And we've also done a lot of podcasts on charging topics, and will continue to do so on specific topics related to charging. So keep an eye on the Out of Spec podcast. It's a separate channel here on YouTube, and we're doing daily episodes related to cars, mostly electric cars, and a lot of charging topics. So that will be coming. What else do we have? Blink recently redid their entire back-end app, which is very cool. So I have to play around with that a little bit more. The problem is most Blink chargers are offline.
Right.
So that's kind of a shame. Francis Energy is redoing their entire back-end app. They have a lot of chargers out in the Midwest, and they're actually making users create an entirely new account. They're like, we are switching over systems completely. Okay, seems interesting. The thing is, if you're going to do something like that, it's better to rip the Band-Aid off early and do it sooner rather than later. So it seems like right now everyone's like, holy crap, electric cars are hitting mainstream. We need to get our in order before we are ready for next year. So my guess is October 2022. This is my feeling, and you tell me how you feel, but I'm feeling okay. A lot of craziness going on with charging, experimenting, new back-end systems, and a lot of robustness improvements, all seemingly for the goal of 2023 to have a much more reliable system-wide network. That's my impression. How would you feel about that?
I hope that's true.
I hope that's true.
Yeah, I mean, I hope for improvement overall. So I don't want to say that it's going to go downhill, because that would not be good.
Yeah, so just a quick little summary on October 2022. Maybe we'll do one in November and December going forwards. Tesla seems to be right on the cusp of installing their brand new version 4 chargers. They've just started actually installing their mega chargers for semi-trucks, although that's not for light duty stuff, so separate topic. They've announced their CCS adapter, and that has been brought to market. So now we're seeing a lot of Teslas charge and non-Tesla superchargers. We also are hearing rumors that the Supercharger network might open soon in America to non-Tesla vehicles. However, we don't know the details of the rollout, if it's going to be station specific, if it's going to be adapter or cable, or a mix of all the above. Moving on to the public networks, we're seeing a lot of new hardware going in, seemingly pretty reliable, although of course a little bit of bugs here and there, but I guess that's to be expected when you're putting in new hardware. I would have liked to see probably a little bit more robustness from that. It's just a shame that we're having issues with the brand new, touted to be most reliable hardware out there. We're seeing a trend of a lot more EV drivers clogging up stations. I would say more improper use of stations. But overall, if they're getting power, is that really considered improper? I don't know. But This can be solved with more dispensers. And I think a better way of spending money when it comes to charging is actually to have a diversified power delivery system, which is basically have a centralized power brick. And that's actually a plug-in hybrid Volvo towing a trailer. Pretty cool. To have a centralized power source with multiple dispensers scattered around.
Right.
We've seen this in Zusmarshausen in Germany. This seems to be the most cost-effective way to produce or to make a charging station expand. Problem is, there's not really readily available technology on the market to do that. So I'd love to see that more tech coming down the road. We're seeing a lot of other networks starting to announce deals, partnerships with automakers for free charging plans and things with EVs. I'm not a fan of them personally. I don't know why you would need free charging when you buy a car, but hey, that's how these companies stay in business, I guess. But in my impression, we just end up with more clogged chargers. And the thing we need to do is encourage as much home charging as possible, when possible, to allow for the most amount of throughput at DC chargers for people who actually need to charge quickly. So there you go, October 22, the state of charging from our experience. What should everyone do?
Let us know what you all are finding down in the comments below. We would love to know what everybody else is experiencing as well.
Thanks for watching another Out of Spec Reviews video. See you in another one soon. Bye-bye.